There we go. I'm an instructor for Hub Cycling. I've been with Hub for 5 years now. Um, I am a transportation cyclist mainly, so I don't do it too much for recreation or sport. I just that's how I get around. My family doesn't have a car. We live in East Vancouver, and yeah, I have an electric cargo bike that I ride most of the time, as well as a few embarrassing number of other bikes. Um, and yeah, I love getting more families on bikes. It is one of my big focuses in life right now. Um, the other person here that you may have heard talking a little bit is Mike, one of my colleagues. He's going to be managing, letting people in and out and the chat. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can always pop them in the chat, and Mike will, put on the brakes and get me to answer stuff when there's time along the way, or he might be able to answer questions as well. So yeah, let's get started. Oh, wait, where's my, okay, space bar? How do I get this thing to go forward? That is being weird now. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. All right, so Hub Cycling is a member-based nonprofit. We've been around for a little over 20 years, and we're all about cycling and letting everybody know how awesome it is. We do get to educate thousands of people during the year. A lot of those are elementary school kids where we teach programs at schools around Metro Vancouver. But we also do community programs and lots of webinars now, like this one. We do special events when there's not a pandemic on. We get people together in big groups quite often, like Bike to Work Week, Bike to School Week. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do Bike the Night, which is a 10-kilometer long route through the city that is closed to motor vehicle traffic. And yeah, we get thousands of people to come out and have a big rolling bike party for that one. That's my favorite event. Yeah, so we also do a little bit of advocacy work to try and make cycling better in various cities around BC and around the province. So that's about us. As well, before we get going, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations here in Vancouver. And I would love for you to think about whose territory you live on as you ride, as you work, as you live in the city, and what that means. So I've already kind of introduced myself out of order. So let's get on to the benefits of family biking. So we're going to talk about the benefits, some of the gear, a little bit more about safety, some tips for riding with kids, route planning, which is a big thing, and we'll have lots of time for questions, hopefully. So if you have any questions, any specific questions that you're hoping that I'll answer today, can you please drop that in the chat, and then we'll have a record of it, and I can make sure that I cover that topic as much as possible. If you don't think of anything right now, or you do later, just add that in the chat, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I can. Let's see. Can I see the chat right now? Where is the chat? Why can't I find it? Oh, there it is. Okay. Right. No questions at this point, looks like. Okay. Might just. All right, so some of the benefits. You probably know that cycling is cheaper than driving, so you can save a lot of money. It's often a great way to save time as well, because for shorter trips, especially in the city where there's going to be more traffic, you might actually get there faster by bike than you would by car, especially if you consider the time spent, parking or getting out of your parking garage, or, finding parking at your destination, paying the meter or whatever. There's actually, quite a lot of things that you have to spend time doing when you're driving, and you can avoid that if you're biking. Improving your health, obviously, physical activity is good for our bodies. So getting where you're going while moving your body is good for you. Protecting the environment, because we're not burning fossil fuels. Here in BC, if you're using an electric bike, most of the electricity comes from hydropower. So, that's pretty good. Yeah, the connections. I didn't really didn't really think about how social cycling is until I'd been doing it for years. But I realized that I don't know that people who don't ride bikes much realize this. So I really try to emphasize this a lot. When I'm cycling through the city, I very often bump into people that I know. I just see them riding past. You can say hello, or they're riding the same way, and you can actually just join each other's trip for a little while and chat while you ride, which is something that doesn't really happen with a car. Very hard to drive beside somebody and talk out the windows, I feel like. And then just talking to strangers as well, like particularly during the last year and a half during the pandemic, just getting around by bike and then having those human interactions with other people outside of my household, and naturally distance because you tend to stay a few meters away from people when you're riding. But yeah, those little connections, even however brief, have been so valuable in the last year. And yeah, with the big weird cargo bikes that we have, we're also a bit of a sideshow on wheels. So we always have, people ask us about the bikes or people stare at the bikes. We do get a lot of attention that way. But yeah, it's I do find cycling to be a lot more connected to the city and where what's going on and who's there. All right, so let's see if I can make it. Oops, sorry. So talking about gear. So if you've got a bike already, there's a lot you can do to improve it if you need to. We're going to talk about things to look out for when you're buying gear, some options for kid seats. I'll go through that probably pretty quickly because it sounds like most of the people in here don't need that. Maybe worth knowing for friends, but yeah, different types of family bikes. I've got some pictures of some of the types of things that are around there and how to pick what you're going to get. And then kids' bikes, a little bit about fitting those. Let's see. So this picture, I like to use this picture even though it's pretty old. So that's me when I am 39 weeks pregnant, and my son who's 3 at the time. And this bicycle, I still have it. It's about 20 years old now. When I bought it, it had fairly straight handlebars, and I quickly switched to pedals that I clipped into because I was commuting to work. And it had a pretty narrow seat and everything like that. And then when I was pregnant, I just changed a few things to make it more comfortable for me. So changing the handlebars, I bought them used. They were $11. I got some new pedals because I didn't want to clip my feet in anymore when I was pregnant or with a kid on the bike. So I got some nice wide pedals that work with my sandals. I got a wider saddle because I definitely needed a bit wider platform when I was pregnant. My hips were a little loose. So yeah, you can make fairly small changes to your bike to make it a lot more comfortable. So if you ever have any issues with comfort on your bike or your kids' bikes, don't automatically think you need to change bikes. Look at different options for saddles, for handlebars. Changing just the handlebars on this bike. They're swept back quite a bit more, so I could sit up a lot straighter, and that gave me room for my daughter in my belly and my 3-year-old in the front seat. So you can make very small changes without spending a lot of money, but it can make a huge difference to your ride. Another thing to think about when you are talking about your bike is just make sure that it's running properly. So especially important whenever you go out, you do your ABC quick check. Teach this to your kids as well, nieces, nephews. You want to look at A for air, B for brakes, and C for chain and cables. So give your tires a squeeze, make sure they're not flat, they've got enough air in them. B, check your brakes. So push your bike forward and use your front brake. Roll your bike backwards, use your back brake, make sure that they both stop your bike. And then take a look at your chain, make sure it's not dry and rusty. Add some oil to it if you need to. Look at your cables, make sure they're all connected properly. There's no breaks or frays. And yeah, make sure your bike is safe before you go anywhere. You don't want to find out that your brakes are not working properly when you get up to a hill, right? Do it right before you leave home. So when you are buying gear, either a new bike or just parts, I highly recommend getting stuff from your local bike shop. It may not always be the cheapest price, although, it can be. But it's really nice to have a relationship with people at a bike shop, and they can usually give you a little bit better advice and help you out with finding the right equipment or the right accessories, more so than the big box stores where the staff aren't so well trained and the quality isn't always there. Um, Sporting goods stores can be one place, or like outdoor specialty kind of retailers. Online can be good too. If you are buying a whole bike though, and you buy one online, it it can be tricky to get the bike serviced, or if you have any warranty issues, it's not always as good. So buying it from a brick and mortar store where you have a human being who will help you with any kind of warranty issues or whatever, and who knows how to work with that kind of bike is very, very valuable. um, so yeah, some of those bikes online, especially the e-bikes, they're really cheap, and there's a reason why. um, Making sure if you're buying it used, it's a great way to get a better quality bike than it would cost new. Just try to make sure it's not stolen. So here in Canada, we have the Police Information Center, I believe it's called, CPIC. Project 529 is a registration system too. You can look for the bike there. Looking for those telltale signs that it's been, the lock has been pulled off of it. Often the frame gets kind of dented or bent when thieves try to torque the bike against the frame. Um, and if make sure the bike is working well when you're buying used, that the brakes are okay and the wheels and the tires, and that it fits you well. You can often take them to a bike shop and get them to do like an inspection. Drop test is good too. So you pick up the bike, a few inches, and then drop it on the ground and see what sounds rattly or if anything falls off. It's a very quick way to make sure it's in one piece. Okay. Oops. So front seats are a great option for really little kids. Rear seats, you have more of an age range for that. Trailers are great for kids even older than that, but also carrying lots of stuff, like this buddy here. He decided he needed all the trucks to go to the park. These are great for dogs as well if you've got any pets. A lot of people use them for that. So with cargo bikes, you've got more options too. You can carry adults on the back of a cargo bike. I'm pretty sure, Tara, you've ridden on the back of a cargo bike. I've seen that. This bike is ours. That's my husband there, and one of my hub colleagues who has a broken ankle, I think, or broken shin from soccer. We're giving her a lift to the bus loop in Stanley Park. So not a long trip, like having an adult on the back is kind of difficult to ride a long distance. I guess maybe you could get used to it though. But yeah, for shorter trips, it's great to give somebody a quick ride to the bus or something like that. Yeah, cargo bikes are great for carrying kids and groceries and all kinds of stuff. They are more expensive, bigger, bit more of a theft target. You need more space to store them. I love cargo bikes though, so I could talk about them for hours. Oh, look, see, there's Joe. So yeah, you can also modify a regular bike, like this one. We've got front pannier racks and a little saddle added to a rear rack, and some extra handlebars added onto the seat post, and some BMX pegs for the feet. So you don't necessarily have to get a cargo bike if you've just got one kid to carry. Here's a couple of cargo bike options. The box in the front with either 2 wheels or 3, often called buck feets. So these are getting so much more popular. I think that cargo bikes are big, making them more affordable, either with just getting more of them out there, or with like grants or rebates, is a big part of getting families on the road, because these are so much easier than dealing with seats and trailers. And you can have lots of weather protection. Like you can see there's a possibility of having a canopy over the box. But yeah, these are I think a big thing for getting more families cycling. But yeah, they are pricey. These are another couple of more compact cargo bikes. So if you don't have a huge amount of space, these ones are more regular bike size, but they still carry a couple of kids. The one at the bottom there, the red one, actually the frame comes apart, so you could fit it inside of a car fairly easily without the seats on it. Or there's, the old-fashioned option of adding a trailer bike. The one in the top there, that's my friend Erica with her third child. She has four now, in a little front seat, and then her second child on the trailer bike. And we got one of a dog on the extra cycle at the bottom there, so you can always carry your pets. If you have younger kids, or you know anyone who's got younger kids and they're looking for bikes, I often tell people to look at the growth charts for figuring out how long the stuff will last. So if you're thinking about buying a front seat or a rear seat or a trailer, and you're like, okay, well, I know what the weight limit is. My kid is here. Is it going to be worth the money? So you can kind of think about, okay, if your kid is one of those 50th percentile kids, you can sort of estimate how long it's going to take them to go over the weight limit of the gear. And then, is it worth spending whatever, $300 on a trailer, if you're going to use it for 1 year or 2 years or 5 years? Yeah, so that can be handy, especially if you're not starting out right at birth. Sometimes for things like a cargo bike or even a regular bike, an e-bike, if you're looking at carrying a kid on the rear rack, there might be a weight limit there, and you may want to look at a chart even for an older kid to see how long they'll be able to ride with you potentially. Let's see. Yeah, there's lots of things to think about when you're trying to figure out what to buy. Like, how much space do you have? What else do you want to carry? What's the weather like where you live? Like for us, we get a lot of rain here. I imagine it's similar in the UK, weather-wise. So having a canopy over the box on the bike was great when it was really terrible weather. It's great in the cold as well, just to keep the kids from getting the wind chill. Your budget is probably the first thing you're going to think about. For really little kids, their temperament is often something to think about. Like if you have a child that really loves to be close to you, a front seat might be a lot better than a trailer. And yeah, I mean, the abilities of your kid as well. Like if you have a kid who has any disabilities, difficulty with balance, or maybe they're not able to ride a bike even though they're older, that might be a factor in what kind of bikes you choose or gear you pick. Like if you wanted to get a cargo bike, that's great for carrying older children. Or there are also there's a company called Wike that makes trailers for larger, like adult-sized kids or adults who aren't able to ride on their own. Or the sort of trailer bike style, right, where you attach something on the back and maybe the kid can pedal, but they don't have to worry about balance. Yeah, so there's a lot of options, definitely. So we've kind of already talked about what bikes we have. Skip past this sort of quickly. So kids bikes, yeah. If you were trying to fit what kind of bike your kid needs, unlike with adult bikes where we measure the frame, children's bikes are sized by the wheels. So the size of the frame varies hugely between one brand to the next, and older bikes versus newer bikes. So the size of a children's bike doesn't really tell you that well if it's going to fit. If you're getting a bike that is like one of the bigger brands, they'll often have the specs on the website, so you can look at like what the lowest saddle height is, and you can check the inseam of your kid to figure out whether they're going to be able to stand over the bike. So that's a good one if you're looking for a new bike for your kid. And if you're thinking about generally what size the bikes are, like kids will usually start on a 12 or a 14 inch when they're fairly young. Like this picture is my daughter when she's 3 or 4, and that's a 12-inch bike. She quickly moved up to a 16 when she was just turned 4, and then she was riding 20-inch about a year or two later, and then she stole her brother's 24-inch when she was about 6.5. But yeah, it depends on the kid and how confident they are. But generally, if they are still learning to pedal, learning to ride and balance, you want the bike to fit too small. So you want them to be able to sit on the saddle with their feet flat on the ground, which is, if you're fitting a bike for an adult, that would be way too low. But for kids, when they're learning, they need the bike to be quite small. Once they get pedaling and they can balance and they're more confident, you can keep raising the seat up, and the fit is a little bit more like an adult would. So they'll be touching the ground with their tiptoes. The things to look out for when you are, make sure your kids aren't growing out of their bike, is like if their knees are coming up toward their handlebars, so their bars hit their knees when they turn, that can be a bit of a, safety issue. So you want to make sure that they're not riding a bike that's too small. You also don't want them to be riding a bike that's too big though. So if they can't stand over the top bar, then they could end up bruising themselves if they come off quickly. Generally, kids will outgrow bikes in 1 to 3 years. So plan for that if you're thinking about all the bikes that you might need to be getting. And yeah, again, the fit is important for safety as well. So let's move on. Does anybody have any questions? Since there's only 2 of you, I think we can just unmute yourselves and chime in if you have anything. I guess that's a no. It's so strange when I'm just talking into the ether here. I miss the in-person workshops. All right, so let's move on to the safety stuff. So here in BC, we have the Motor Vehicles Act, that's the laws that govern cycling and driving and anybody who's using the roads. So the law says we are to ride as far to the right as is practicable, which is an odd word. So it doesn't necessarily mean the same as riding as far to the right as is possible. This is a big one because unfortunately common source of injuries for cyclists is getting hit by a door when someone's parking their car on the side of the road and they fling their door open without looking into a cyclist. So we want to stay away from the doors of cars. So we ride to the right, but not right up against the car doors in that case. In the picture, you can also see there's other things you might want to avoid. Like we've got a couple of utility covers on the road there. They're metal, they can be slippery in the rain. So, going around those and not necessarily riding over them. Generally, they're fine if you're riding straight, but if you're in a corner and you're turning, you may want to avoid riding over one of those. Another part of being predictable is signaling. So this is something that takes kids a little while to get. Usually once they're 8, 10 years old, they can do this, but it does take practice. A great way to get them into the habit is just being a good example. So when you ride, you signal. It's a good idea also to do shoulder checking a lot. So when we teach cycling skills, we teach them the signal sandwich. So you shoulder check to make sure that the way is clear, and then you signal to tell everybody what you're going to do, and then one last shoulder check just before you turn, and then you make your turn. So yeah, shoulder check, signal, shoulder check every time you're going to change lanes, change directions. And yeah, kids can get into the habit. My daughter started signaling pretty regularly now, and she's 7. She'll be 8 in a couple months. And then, following the laws, stopping at stop signs, stop lights, just riding nice and straight. Don't weave in and out of the cars. So in this picture, we've got some parked cars and then there's a gap between the cars. You don't want to go over to the curb in between the cars and then weave back out again. It makes you less visible once you're kind of in that parking area. And if there's a car that suddenly comes up behind you when you're popping out again, it's more opportunities for conflict. So you want to ride in a nice straight line, even if there's a gap between the cars that's shorter. And yeah, just teach your kids to do the same. So yeah, ideally you want to have about 1 meter away from anything when you're riding. So you need to take up as much space as a vehicle does. So about 1 meter from the edge of the road in case there's anything you need to avoid, and about 1 meter at least from any cars that you're driving past, whether they be parked or moving. So if your kids are having trouble kind of keeping the meter, sometimes it helps them to imagine that they have a imaginary friend, an invisible friend who's riding between them and the parked cars, and they've got to leave space for that person. That can sometimes help. And if you are driving, do the Dutch reach. So here in North America, anyways, you open your door with the right hand, which makes you twist around and shoulder check. In the UK, I guess it would be the opposite hand. So once your kids are on their own bikes, which all of the kids that we're talking about here today are, there's definitely kind of some milestones. Getting the balance and being able to steer and ride straight, being able to take their hands off and signal consistently. Also, just being able to like their perception is something that develops. Like we don't necessarily think of this, but children's brains are still developing all the time. So their ability to perceive how far away something is and how fast it's moving, it's not finished developing yet. So, judging, say, is it safe to cross the street because there's a car coming? Is it safe? Like that doesn't necessarily develop completely until they're like 8 or 10. So we sometimes expect more out of them than they're capable of. So it's definitely a good idea to keep that in mind if you're riding with kids that are like under 10. They just, they're just not ready to, even their perception is different. So learning right from left is another one, probably not so much of an issue for the kids that you're riding with, but when they're younger, like under 8, let's say, it can be super helpful if you have something on the handlebars to distinguish right and left. So if you say, okay, we're turning left here, that's the bell side. You're turning right here, that's your light side. So you have something that they know the difference. Some children's bikes even have a different color hand grip on each side of the bike. So, left is yellow and right is red or something like that. So that can give them a visual cue. Front loading is one that I am very, very fond of. I've got into the habit of doing it at work. I don't do it as much with my kids, but it definitely really helps when I do. So before you leave, before you go on your ride, you go over a few things that you want to see from them on the ride. So expectations, also just, where you're going, how you're going to get there. Think about what they might have trouble with. Like maybe if they developed a habit of rolling through stop signs or something like that. You can maybe just say, hey, so we're going to be riding through here. There's lots of stop signs. What are we going to do with the stop signs? And get them to tell you, oh yeah, we're going to stop, put our feet down. Yeah, just setting the expectations and giving them that little reminder right before you leave is sort of setting them up for success. So it can make your rides a little bit better, so they don't have to, try to think of all this themselves. You've kind of given them a good reminder at the beginning. I mentioned this before, so modeling good behavior. Yeah, try to be the best cyclist that you can be, because they're watching you. When can they bike alone is a question I hear all the time, and there isn't really any answer for this one. It depends on the kids. So I would say, when your kids are competent to control their bicycle, start and stop well, use their gears if they need to. They are, pretty consistent about paying attention to stop signs and, using whatever, traffic circles, roundabouts, whatever kind of infrastructure there is around you. And yeah, and then they also know what to do if something goes sideways. So, if they get a flat tire or whatever it is, they know what they should do, or they have a way to maybe to get a hold of you or to seek help from someone else. So yeah, that age could be, maybe could be 10, could be 12, could be 14. I guess it depends on the kid. I'm just starting to let my son ride around the neighborhood on his own. Yeah, in like very quiet streets. There's sort of a, like the busy streets around us. There's this big kind of block, so he doesn't cross the busy streets. Yeah, so we're just kind of starting, and he's almost 11. Although it's still a little nerve-wracking, and I'm thinking about getting him a walkie-talkie. Yeah, my daughter is definitely not ready for that. She's not super consistent with stop signs yet. All right, let's move on. So infrastructure is another thing to think about a lot when you're riding with kids. What do you have around you? Do you have mainly major streets with a bicycle sharrow painted on the road, or do you have painted lanes? Do you have a buffered painted lane? Maybe local street bikeways. Those are generally considered to be more comfortable. So their traffic is limited with modal filters so that vehicles can't go through all the way, or the speed limit is usually lower here in Vancouver. They're 30 kilometers per hour. They're usually residential streets as well. So there's not as much traffic, going to businesses and so on. You wouldn't see as many, huge trucks as well. Although I have to say there's a whole lot of Amazon and UPS and all that. Protected bike lanes are great if you have them, because you're fully separated from the cars, but they're often, in the downtown area, so you can go where you're going. Off-street pathways. I mean, I love riding on these with my kids. The Vancouver seawall is the #1 place that we ride, I would say, if we're just going for a ride for fun. Or, well, even if we're going places, there's lots of destinations along there too. So yeah, planning where you're gonna go based on what the route or what the infrastructure is like is even more important with kids. Whether they're not even not necessarily about their abilities or their skills to ride, but also just about their experience. Like their, the vehicles are bigger and louder to them and faster, and the way that the city traffic or whatever affects the kids is yeah, I find it's a little different from us. Like I've been riding for I don't know, 20 something years most days, and so I just I'm not so affected by all of that, but the kids are definitely a little more sensitive to it, so something worth thinking about. The maps around here in Vancouver area generally have a legend which will explain what type of routes there are. So you'll have, maybe a yellow line with green around it, or the reverse for like a fully off-street pathway. You might have like a dotted line or something for a painted bicycle lane, that kind of thing. So take a look at your maps, and or even Google bike maps. The bike layer can give you some information about this stuff. It's not always accurate though, so don't trust Google 100%. Oops, what happened there? Why is that blank? I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. There's a question. Yeah. What do you think about when you're planning a bike ride? So tell me, what do you think about when you're planning a bike ride? I've sort of talked about the things that I think about, what the route's going to be like, how much traffic. These days, since it is construction season, I will usually think about where there's construction, and we might avoid certain streets because there will be more drivers trying to avoid the construction. I also will think about trees as well. So I'll pick a route based on having more shade in the summer versus, especially on some of these really hot days. But how about you, Alex and Tara? What do you think about when you're planning a ride with your kids?
I definitely think about the route for sure. We live like really close to the First Avenue Viaduct that like goes over to the Home Depot, and like it's the fastest to get down to the seawall to go that way. But like I've just been making Darius walk his bike over it because there's no, it's not separated. I could go around like up to the like northern
Great Northern Way.
But sometimes I'm like in a hurry, but I'm like, is it faster to go to Great Northern Way or walk across the bridge? So, but definitely route, like how like, is there a separated bike lane, or is it a bike lane at all? Like, that's all, like, I'm always thinking about that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's a tricky area too. Do you
Mhm.
know about there's a little um separate path that goes from like behind Home Depot, and then it sort of goes along beside the railway
Yeah,
tracks
yeah,
toward
I
Main
take
Street.
that. It's just
Yeah,
getting over there, like getting over the viaduct
yeah.
is the tricky
It's
part. That's
like you look at it on the map and it's like someone threw a piece of spaghetti in the middle of the floor. It's this little totally isolated, fully
yeah,
protected bike route. But you
it's
can't get to it
lovely
without
if
being on
you
a
can
busy
get to
street.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit frustrating when the city put that in. I'm like, that's great, but why?
Where's the point?
Where does it go? Yeah, that's the one I use when I go to Home Depot. Um, yeah. What about Alex? Do you have anything you think about when you plan a bike ride?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it sounds quite similar actually. I live in a coastal town, and it's like the
Hmm.
main street through the town runs right through the middle of the town. So actually, to get down onto like the seafront area where it's a dual use riding and walking promenade, it's a nightmare because there's like two crossings on this whole street. So actually, to
Right.
even walk the bikes down or whatever is really difficult. And then there's a part, sort of a third of the way down the prom, that you can't cycle on. So you can cycle the first bit and you can cycle the last two bits, but then there's just this one bit where they've got no, you can't cycle there. So it's kind
Hmm.
of, can we divert round, but then that's like a little bit of a cut through from the main road. So if you go on a day when like we've got a lot of tourism here, so
Hmm.
if you go on a day when like the caravan sites are getting all their people in on holiday, then they're all going down that road because it's the wrong way. So ours is like what day of the week it is, what the weather's like. Everything changes, and also which sort of route. And we've got a route that used to be railway tracks. There's absolutely no traffic on it whatsoever. It's all sort of nature reserve and grassland and stuff like that now. But if it's been
Hmm.
raining, it's really boggy, and it's all those sort of
Yeah.
considerations. It's kind of,
Puddles,
it's left
mud. Yeah.
wild, so you have to kind of respect that you're not going to ride it between sort of September and April.
Right. I just realized there's a couple more people in the in here that I didn't see on the list on the side. Anna and the Shu family. Anybody else want to chime in?
Anna mentioned that she considers weather preparedness and also her kids'
Yeah,
energy levels for doing
yeah,
longer rides.
yeah, definitely. Or even just like how, yeah, I consider their energy levels, but also how much I can push them. Like my son, I once he's done, he's done. There's just, you cannot get him to ride any further. So because I have a cargo bike, I know that I can always tow his bike and carry him, so I don't have to worry about doing a longer ride. Um, with my daughter, I can usually push her a little further. She's, yeah, I can get her to do a bit more. I may have to tow her up a hill, but generally I can get a little bit more distance out of her. Um, yeah, having, actually, that's something I should add to the presentation. I keep forgetting. Having a way to give your kids a tow is really handy when they're riding on their own, but they're not necessarily able to do longer distances. There's a great product called the Towwee. So it's TOWWHEE. So it's like a bungee cable with a loop on each end. You can attach it to your seat post on your bike, or if you have a cargo bike, you can put it on the rear rack, and then you loop it around your kids' front, like the center of their handlebars or the stem, and you can give them a bit of a boost up a hill. So I got one of those last year, and it's been amazing to just, you just use it on the uphill. You can't really use it when you're going downhill. But yeah, it's quite easy to hook up. And I get my daughter up the hill for a couple blocks, then I detach it, and then away we go. So it's like a quick on and off. Not as much fiddling around as like towing their bikes with a cargo bike would be, or attaching them to a trailer or whatever. So yeah,
I'm going to.
if you want to do longer distances, that can be a good one. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I said thank you for that. I was going to ask, and I'm going to check that out. The one issue will be making sure that my kids don't see it as like a, like a toy. Oh, mommy, like I want you to pull me when they don't really need it, right? So that'll be a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I haven't had that issue too much. I don't know. It depends on the kid, I guess. My daughter really likes riding, and I think she I don't know, she gets a lot of satisfaction about being able to ride a longer distance by herself. Um, so she doesn't usually ask for the tow unless she's tired or yeah, so far so good anyway. Yeah, but yeah, it is nice to have that option, and it's definitely, I mean, the Toei is about, I think it's around $50 here in Canada, and yeah, it's just it seems like a lot for what it is, I suppose, but it's been a great investment for me because it just makes it possible to also, like, I don't have to bring the cargo bike. If I have that, I know that I can always tow my daughter up a hill, so I can just bring whatever bike I want to ride, um, even my little bowling bike or whatever. Yeah, so it's sort of more affordable than, a cargo bike. Anybody else have something they want to add? Let's see, I'll move on. Oops. Oh yeah, we've talked about this stuff. So distance, safety, facilities, visibility. Yeah, visibility is one we haven't actually talked about a huge amount. Using lights on kids' bikes. I find a lot of people don't people who ride for fun mostly, they tend to ride when it's sunny and when it's daylight. So they often don't have lights, but um, using lights any time of the day is actually a bit of a safety boost. If you are riding in the daytime, especially if there's going to be car traffic, using a flashing white light on the front is going to make you just a little bit more visible to drivers. There was some research done here. I think it was Vancouver Coastal Health or Vancouver General Hospital. They looked at some, I think it was like cycling crash data, and they found that using a light during the day reduced your chance of collision by 47%. Was quite a big jump. So having a light on the bike, even during the daytime, can definitely help you stay more visible. I find that the flashing lights, like a blinking light during the day, is a little bit better, because if it's not a super bright light in the day, you can't necessarily see it that well as you would at night. But yeah, even the little fairly cheap blinkies that you can just attach to the handlebars are great for kids. Yeah, hills is another one. How hilly is the route? I love using Google Maps, or I have another bike app that I use sometimes for this. It's called Ride with GPS. There's a free version you can use. I can plot out the route and then look at the elevation profile, so I can see where the hills are, and I can adjust the route, move it around, and then reduce the amount of hills. Or not, depending. It's a bit of a balance. Like, I rode to the Sunshine Coast a couple weeks ago for camping, not with the kids, but because I wasn't with the kids and I was riding an e-bike, I made the choice to go on a quieter street that was more hilly, just for a nicer experience. So we did like an extra, I don't know, like 80 meters of climbing. But it was so much nicer ride because there was virtually no traffic at all. So sometimes it isn't just about avoiding hills. It can also be about, making the choice between hills or traffic. Ideally, it would be neither, but yeah. Oh yeah, your familiarity with the route is another thing too. Like, if it's somewhere new and you don't know the route as well, you may have to stop more often, take a look at a map, or it's nice if it's somewhere that you know. My kids know the neighborhood pretty well because we ride so much, so they are familiar with the sort of specific routes that we take. So I'll usually kind of say, okay, we're gonna go to the seawall. but don't go the Watson Wiggle because there's more traffic, drivers avoiding the construction near there. We're going to go the same way that we go to school, along 14th Avenue instead of 10th Avenue. And then, you know, I can kind of give them a sense of which route to take, and they know it, because we ride those routes fairly often. Kids really do learn a lot more about their neighborhood when they get to walk and bike around, so much better than in a car, because they're going, you know, more of a human speed when you're on a bike or on foot, and you can actually learn things and see things better. And there was some research done a few years ago in the US, I think, that children who walked and biked more often had a more positive perception of their neighborhood. They felt safer and more comfortable there, and they had a better idea of what was where. So it's definitely good for them to kind of feel like they belong, and to actually know where they are as well, so they're not going to get lost. Oh yeah, scenery. This is
Lisa,
definitely
do you ever
huge.
pre-ride a route to check it out if it's suitable?
I do for a bigger trip sometimes. Like for the Sunshine Coast bike trip, I went to pre-ride the quieter route, and then I found like this trail that I thought we could do. So I went to check that out, and I'm really glad that I did pre-ride it, because the trail was it was it was not suitable for cycling. I had to walk my bike down, and it was loose rocks and narrow and twisty, and I almost fell a few times, and that was with an empty bike. There's no way I could have done it with all my camping gear. So yeah, that was a very experimental route, and I'm glad that I tried it out first. We had to do something else because it was just not like, it would have been difficult to hike, and I couldn't have gone up it. I could only go down. So sometimes I'll pre-ride a route. I mean, in my city, I know I know it so well that I don't tend to do that, but I will often, if I'm just trying to get a sense of what a new route is like, I will often look at Google Street View to, you know, that can give you an idea of like, okay, is it really wide? Does it look like it would have a lot of traffic? Are there a lot of driveways, or, you know, maybe it's kind of industrial and there's going to be trucks coming out. Google Street View can give you a sense of that. It won't necessarily give you, you know, the day-to-day conditions, but it'll give you a bit better idea if you want to ride through there or not. So that's sort of my virtual pre-ride tip. Yeah. Whether we've talked about energy levels, we already talked about.
Can you recommend any kid-friendly safety and skills videos for cycling?
Ooh, I can't think of any off the top of my head, other than
And what
the
Hub has.
Hub stuff that we had. Yeah. The do we still have the what is it
Online
called? The
programming?
Learn to Ride curriculum. That one.
Yeah,
That's
there's an
the one that I was thinking
online aspect to that. So depending how old your child is, if they're in intermediate elementary, that would be appropriate. Or even high
Yeah,
school.
I'd say 8 to 12 it's sort of aimed at. Age 8 to 12. Yeah. Yeah. Oops. End of trip facilities. This is a. What's that?
I'll find a link for it.
Yeah, that would be good. This is something I think about a lot when I'm going to bike somewhere, if I'm going to a destination. You know, sometimes people talk about end of trip facilities, meaning like showers or whatever, but generally it's bike racks for me. Like, where are we going to lock the bikes? So thinking about that, like if you're going to the beach, are you going to be able to lock the bike where you can see it? Or I don't know, if you're going to be going to a store or a business, what are the bike racks like? How safe do you feel like it is in that area? How likely is your bike going to get stolen? That kind of thing. So you might want to bring extra locks. So route planning resources, I kind of mentioned the maps. So yeah, these yellow and green lines, those are the fully protected, separated bike lanes. Here in Metro Vancouver, we've got the TransLink regional cycling map, so you can download that as a PDF to your phone and then zoom in on it, which is a fairly low data way to to navigate if you want, or you can get a paper version. The city of Vancouver has the slow streets, which will show up on Google as well. Let's Go Biking is a great resource if you want to do like little recreational rides around Metro Vancouver and the Okanagan as well. They have 2 books out now, and there's a website that has a lot of information. And it's kind of like it's a family that would go out for bike rides, and they would include a map and information about it. Some of the older posts would be like reviews from the children in the family about how they like the route. It's pretty cute, and they're all designed to be pretty family friendly, not difficult, and or they have a rating scale that you can get a sense of how hard it's going to be. Hub has a lot of resources on our website, so if you are ever looking for information, we've got information on all the rules of the road. You can go there. We've got links to all of these places for maps and stuff, so definitely check out the Hub resources page. And crowdsourcing is another thing I suggest. So particularly for anybody who's new at cycling, or if you're not in Metro Vancouver or BC, join a family cycling group online if you can. There's Vancouver Family Cycling is on Facebook. That's the group that I helped build. And it's a really nice little space to ask for advice. Like sometimes people will say, okay, I'm riding to an area in another city. Can anybody give me advice on what's the quietest route to get there? And people will give you specific, turn by turn routes sometimes. Or, people will buy and sell bikes for kids or child seats. Just let people know about what's going on around the city, or look at people will ask for advice on, what type of bike they think would be the best, or if they're looking to buy a cargo bike, or if they are having trouble with their kids, like, I don't know, if they've got a toddler and the toddler doesn't want to wear a helmet, any advice on some tips for getting them to like their helmet, that kind of thing. So having those kind of spaces is a really great place to get information from other people who are already doing it. And Vancouver Family Biking is a good one locally. Does anybody have any more questions? We got about 3 minutes left.
One question is, do you have any tips for taking kids on the Okanagan Valley Rail Trail? I'm assuming it's relatively flat and easy. I have done it, and it is flat and easy in some places, but there is loose gravel, so it's not for a new rider. Bring lots of water. I've ridden it only as an adult and only a little bit. Basically what Mike said. It's loose gravel some places, and but it is quite flat because it's it's a rail bed, so they never have a very steep grade. There's quite a lot of places where you can go in and out. The section that I've ridden is Myra Canyon, which is near Kelowna. And that one is it's particularly lovely because there's a lot of trestles. There's something like 17 trestles in that section, so you really get some gorgeous views. But you would probably want to have think about the bikes that you're taking, like maybe do some practice with your bikes and see how your tires do on a gravelly area here, and test that out. Find somewhere that has loose gravel and see how your kids do riding around on it. Like there's a bunch of gravel underneath the Cambie Bridge on the south side. I've taught there, and it's one place to practice gravel riding. It's just a little section where there's lots of gravel, or somewhere like that. You can see how your bike tires do. Maybe you might want to get something that's fatter, and I don't know what kind of tires are best on gravel, like knobby tires, I guess. I don't really have a lot of experience with gravel riding, so. Or gravel bike. Yeah, take your bikes to Mud Bay.
Right.
That's all the questions in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you
think
guys.
that
This was awesome.
Yeah, I think I got.
Wow, we
Yeah, well,
ended right on time.
thanks for coming today. Yeah. I think we just have, whoops, yeah, just a couple of suggestions in case you really love Hub and you want to get involved. You can bring Hub to your workplace. We do workshops. Well, hopefully we'll be doing them again soon in person. I think it may be webinars for the moment still. We do school programs though. We have been doing those because they're mainly outdoors. So you can talk to your parental advisory council or possibly the city to try and get more funding to cover the programs. We've got some online courses running as well about city cycling, a little bit more about the rules of the road. If you want to get involved as well in supporting the advocacy, we're always looking for members on our local committees. So Vancouver and UBC has a Hub local committee. Each of the areas around, there's one I think for Burnaby, and the website has a list of all of them if you want to get involved in volunteering for that. Actually, a membership helps us do more of what we do, and you get some discounts as well and invites to all of our events. Yeah, so hopefully you have a good ride the next time you go out, and please do the feedback survey. It's really helpful for us to know what you think and what your experience was like, and yeah, check out our website for more info. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.